So when you were watching Nell Thomas's presentation about experimental product development at Etsy, she talked about continuous deployment and the importance of being able to rapidly deploy changes into production. And that capability is fundamentally about lead time, about asking this question: how can we get changes into production as fast as possible? And this is important because it determines how quickly we can get fixes to our users, how quickly we can deploy experiments and get feedback on whether what we're doing is valuable. So it's a very important metric. It's also quite hard to measure, but this is a question that you can always ask. How long would it take your organization to deploy a change that involved just one single line of code? Do you do this on a repeatable, reliable basis? So whenever you start working somewhere, this is always a good question to ask. If I had to make a single line change and get it deployed to production using the regular process, how long would it take? How do we reduce lead time? Well, fundamentally, we reduce lead time by reducing batch size. So what's batch size? Well, batch size is a term that comes from manufacturing. And the batch size is how big the amount of work you're doing is. And the problem with product development is that the batches, the work is intangible. You can't see the features and measure how big they are. So it makes it hard to think about lead time and batch size and the relationship. But by just using math, by using Q theory, we can see there's a relationship between lead time and batch size. So reducing batch size is incredibly powerful as a product management technique. It reduces lead time or cycle time. It reduces the variability in work flowing through our system. It reduces the amount of overhead involved in getting work done. It accelerates feedback, and it increases the efficiency of our product development process, and it increases our team's motivation and our feeling of urgency. It's incredibly powerful to work in small batches. So what, in the context of product development, do we mean by small batches? Basically, it's how big the pieces of work you're doing are. So an epic, which might take months to deliver, or a release, which might take months to deliver, is an enormous batch. And that's way too big for product development. For planning purposes, it's useful to think in epics or releases, but in terms of actually getting features released to users and getting feedback, it's much too big. We should always be breaking it up into much smaller chunks, and ideally the smallest possible chunks. Evidence shows that what drives improved software delivery, performance and organizational performance is when you can get work delivered in a few days, certainly not more than a week. So when we're breaking down work and trying to deliver features or experiments, we should break them down into a few days worth of work. And that's what allows us to get these benefits of working in small batches and reduce lead time, so that we can respond better to what we learn and get all these other benefits that we talk about in this slide. So basically, you always want to break down work as small as possible. And in order to think about that, there's this nice acronym called INVEST. And what it says is that individual pieces of work, individual batches, individual stories should be independent. That means we should be able to work on them in any order. We should remove dependencies. They should be negotiable. So that means we should be able to change what's in that batch of work based on what we learn from delivering it. They should be valuable, so they should actually deliver some value to a stakeholder. You don't want to break things up so small that they don't deliver value to someone. That's an artificial subdivision that's not actually useful. We want them to be estimable to a good degree of precision. So we want to be able to look at a piece of work and say it's 2 days, and have it not be, less than 1 day or more than 3 days. It should be small, less than a week to build, and it should be testable. We should know what it would take for us to be done with that thing. What does done look like in clear, measurable terms? And that's what you're looking for when you take bits of work, outcomes, and break them up into small batches. Use the INVEST principle. Make sure work is not going to take more than a few days to deliver. And then, obviously, once you've delivered it, make sure you plan to learn from what you deliver in the course of doing that.